It's interesting about IT managers' understanding of storage at the moment because the market's changing. It used to be that storage was this really specialist skill that needed often entire teams in some of the big enterprises to look after. Whereas what we're seeing now is a bit of a change. We're seeing a lot of the software elements of enterprise storage move up into things like VMware, Hyper-V, or even in some cases up into the application. And that means storage is all about performance and reliability. So IT managers need to be aware, but they should also at the same time be aware of the changing marketplace and what are the requirements of storage. And it's less about whistles and bells now and more about performance and reliability. I think the biggest thing that organisations need to be aware of now is this change that's happening in the storage industry. We've gone through a bit of a cycle. For a long time the storage industry was about dumb disk and intelligent volume managers and applications taking control of the data. We then went through a period around the late 90s, early 2000s with the move to what at the time was called enterprise storage. A lot of people call it a framed approach in the US, which is about having a layer of storage and then an operating system and intelligent software to do things with the data, to do RAID protection, to do things like snapshots and mirroring. What we've seen now with the move to what some people call software-defined storage is that layer move up and things like hypervisors and applications taking control of data. What that does actually is expose a lot of the storage industry because a lot of companies and a lot of vendors haven't solved the core problem in storage, which is around performance and reliability, which is actually why you're seeing people like the all-flash array vendors coming through now, because the hard disk guys haven't solved the performance problem. Now what we did when we were Seagate was to solve that problem at source, which means as we give away some of that intelligence higher up into the stack, we are in XIO pretty much the only ones who've solved the performance and reliability problem, whereas a lot of other vendors are just using OEM disk shelves and they're going to have real big challenges going forward. So XIO have solved the problem in a number of ways. One is through very basic hardware engineering. So we've stopped disks vibrating, we keep them cool, and we actually talk to them by surface rather than just talking to them as a drive. That means we can actually get about 2 to 3 times the performance out of a hard disk drive to anybody else. But most importantly, we've got an annual failure rate of 0.1% for our drives. Now you compare that to the industry standard, which is between 5 and 6%. That means that we can actually provide storage that just doesn't need servicing for 5 years, whereas everybody else has to go out and swap those disk drives. We don't have that problem because we've solved the core hardware problem and we've developed software that can deal with hard disk drives and solid state disk drive issues in the background and just at the end of the day not worry about it, plug a box in and just leave it for 5 years. Some of the crazy things I've heard, the favourite one is you can achieve 1 million IOs per second. Which is usually a marketing number and not actually a real world work life, and comes to the other point of who actually needs 1 million IOs per second. It's a bit like saying I can give you a car that does 400 miles an hour. Well, great, but where do I get to drive it, A, and B, more importantly, how much does it cost? Also the other thing is that I've seen is things like consumer grade flash doesn't fail for 5 to 7 years. Actually the stats don't back that up. There's a lot of software needed to do that. And there's a lot of drive changes needed along those lifespans. I always say to anybody, any marketing claim you see in storage, ask for proof. So if somebody says something's going to last 5 years, ask for some customers who've had that product for 5 years and can actually demonstrate it. Because there's a lot of things that get called out with no proof and it's just a marketing guy shouting out a statement.